Funny, isn't it? How a man can work all his life, day after day, year after year, and still end up with nothing to show for it. Not because he was lazy, not because he didn't try, but because no one ever showed him how to plant what he earned, so it could grow while he slept. You see, most people were raised to spend. Some were taught to save. But almost no one was taught to invest. Not truly, not patiently, not wisely, and so they keep working, pouring time into a bucket with a hole in the bottom, thinking maybe if they just pour faster, the hole will stop leaking, but it never does, because the hole isn't in their job, the hole is in their thinking. You live in a world that rewards investment, but most of what you were taught rewards effort. Effort looks noble, it feels right, it earns applause. But effort alone won't make you wealthy. Not in this system, not in this lifetime, and I know. That might sting a little, especially if you were raised like I was, to believe that hard work was the way out. The way up, the way through, but look around. How many people do you know who worked themselves to the bone and still ended up broke, tired, and disappointed? They did everything right, or at least everything they were told. They showed up. They stayed loyal. They sacrificed their health, their dreams, their time, and now they're older. And they're still worried about rent. Why? Because they never learned the secret, that money doesn't grow just because you work. Money grows when you give it something to do, something useful, something that multiplies. That's what investing is. It's not a gamble. It's not a trick. It's not only for the rich. It's simply this: taking what little you have and giving it a job so it can work while you rest, while you sleep, while you live. But 90% of poor people never do this. Not because they're too stupid, but because they've been too scared, too misinformed, too busy surviving to even consider that they could grow something beyond survival. You can't plant seeds when you're running from wolves. And for most of your life, that's what poverty has felt like, hasn't it? A chase, a panic, a treadmill that never slows down. So when someone says invest, you hear risk, loss, danger, scam. You hear, that's not for people like me. You think of all the ways it could go wrong, but not the ways it could finally go right. No one told you that not investing is also a risk, a silent one, a risk that doesn't explode, it erodes. A slow decay that you don't notice until it's too late. See, the danger isn't just in making the wrong investments. The deeper danger is in never making any, in letting fear become your financial policy. And that fear, it's not yours alone, it was passed down to you, whispered into your ear by generations who never had the chance to learn different, who thought saving was safety, and that putting money in the bank was enough. But banks don't grow your money. They just hold it, and sometimes even that's questionable, so you end up with money that stays still. While prices move, while rent moves, while life moves, and over time, your still money becomes shrinking money. And you wonder why you're working harder but feeling poorer. It's not just about how much you earn. It's about whether what you earn keeps pace with the world around you. And for that to happen, you have to invest. Not wildly, not recklessly, but consistently, patiently, with wisdom. The kind of wisdom no one taught you in school, because most schools don't teach freedom. They teach obedience, and obedience doesn't lead to wealth, only to wages. You were trained to be a worker, not a grower, and that's where the trap began, but it doesn't have to stay that way. The moment you begin to think differently, everything shifts, not overnight, but over time. And that time passes whether you invest or not. The difference is what you'll have waiting for you at the other end. And no, it's not too late. Not if you can hear this. Not if you can still learn, still question, still choose. But the first Choice is this: to stop believing that money is only made by labor, and to start seeing that it can also be grown by intention, by awareness, by letting go of the belief that investing is for them, and not for you, because it is for you, if you're willing to see it differently and to do what you were never taught. We'll talk more about that in time, but for now, just sit with this. It's not that you're broken. It's that the system raised you to survive, not to build, not to invest, not to rise. But all of that can change once you begin to see what's been invisible all along, and you're beginning. Now, aren't you? Most people don't even realize they've been trained to avoid growth. Not in words, but in feeling. They've been taught to fear loss more than they hope for gain, to protect pennies instead of planting seeds. And that kind of fear, it runs deep. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It whispers. Don't risk it. You might lose everything. It's safer to hold on tight. But let me ask you something. If you're holding on to something that's shrinking in value every year, is that safety or is that slow suffocation? Fear loves to dress itself in logic. It says, be smart, be careful. But underneath that voice, there's a trembling child who's seen too much lack, too much loss, too much instability. And that child, he still lives inside you, doesn't he? Still checks the price tag twice. Still flinches when the phone bill comes. Still hears his parents arguing behind closed doors. Worried about money. That fear becomes your lens, your map, your entire belief system. So of course you don't invest. Not because you're lazy, but because every part of you is trained to survive, not to expand, and investment feels like expansion. It feels like stepping off the cliff before you realize there's a bridge beneath you. But here's the strange part. You already invest all the time. You just don't call it that. You invest your time into things that don't grow you. You invest your energy into people who drain you. You invest your attention into noise that numbs you. The only difference is, those investments don't pay you back. So the question isn't, do you invest? The question is, what have you been investing in? You see, the poor are often rich in labor, but poor in leverage. They give away the one thing they can never get back, time, and expect that one day it will return as wealth. But time doesn't multiply itself. It disappears. You work, you sleep, you wake up, and it's gone. Unless something is working for you while you sleep, you're always starting over. You're always running just to stay in place. That's what investing changes. It introduces leverage. It puts something to work, even while you rest. Even while you're not there. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be risky. It just has to begin. The habit matters more than the amount, because the habit reshapes how you think. And how you think is what changes your life most. People think investing means gambling, stocks, crypto, confusion, stress. But that's only because no one ever walked them through it, slowly, calmly, wisely, and when you're scared. Anything unfamiliar looks dangerous, even freedom. That's why the poor often reject opportunity, not out of foolishness, but out of protection. They've been hurt before, used, tricked, laughed at. So when something new comes along, they say no. Not because they don't want better, but because they don't want worse. That kind of pain lives in the body. It lives in the shoulders, in the tightness of the jaw, in the habit of always saying, maybe next time. But next time never comes unless you make it come. So how do you begin? You begin small, smaller than you think, with an amount so gentle, your fear has nothing to fight. Because this is about more than money. It's about self-trust. It's about believing that your future deserves more than your past, that you are not cursed, that you are not stuck, just untrained until now. And I know you've seen people try and fail. You've heard stories of loss, of scams, of people who gave it all and ended up with nothing. But the truth is, you've already lost years trying the old way, the working till you drop way, the saving while it shrinks way, the hoping someone will come rescue you way. What if that way was the biggest scam of all? There's no certainty in this world, not in work, not in savings, not even in life itself. But there is rhythm, there is pattern, there is wisdom, and you can learn to walk in it. Not rushed, not desperate, but steady, like a man who knows where he's going. Investing isn't just about building wealth. It's about building belief. It's about choosing to live as if tomorrow is worth preparing for, as if your future self is real and worth fighting for. Most people don't invest because deep down, they don't believe their future will be any different from their past. So why bother? But you're not most people. Not anymore. You're listening. You're awakening. You're feeling the old thoughts rise and break like waves, and underneath them, stillness, clarity, a quiet voice that says, there's another way. And there is, but only if you're willing to take the first step, even if it's just in thought, even if it's just today. Let that be enough for now. Because every forest begins with a single seed, planted by someone who believed in a tree. They might never sit under. We'll talk more soon. But sit with this a while. Let the fear settle. Let the noise fade and ask yourself quietly, what have I been investing in, and what has it given me back? You know, it's not just fear that stops people from investing. It's habit. Worn in, silent, generational habit. You don't even know you're wearing it until you try to step outside of it, until someone asks you to think differently. And suddenly you feel resistance, heavy, like trying to walk through water. That resistance isn't laziness, it's memory, not your memory, your father's, your mother's, your grandmother's. You were shaped by people who lived through struggle, through war, through famine, through systems that didn't care. If they sank or swam, they didn't have time to think about investing. They were too busy trying to keep the lights on, the rice pot full, the landlord away. So they taught you what they knew, what they had learned by surviving, and they handed it to you with love, even if it was wrapped in fear. They said, don't take risks, keep your head down, get a job, a steady one, save every penny, don't trust banks, don't trust systems, don't trust anyone. And you listened because you loved them, because they fed you, because they were all you had. But what they handed you was not a map to wealth, it was a manual for survival. And survival is not the same as freedom. So now, you find yourself in a different time, a different world, but still using their old instructions, still reading from their pages, even though the rules have changed. Now we live in a world where money grows in silence, where the rich don't work more, they own more. They place their money into systems that multiply it, while the poor trade their time, hour after hour, year after year, and wonder why nothing changes. It's not because they're not trying hard enough. It's because they were taught to play a game that no longer works, and no one told them the rules had shifted, and why would they? The system works better when the poor stay busy, too busy to question, too tired to learn, too distracted to break the cycle. So you wake up each morning, already behind, already burdened, already anxious, and when someone says, why not invest? It sounds almost insulting, like they're speaking a language from another planet. But listen closely, because you are not trapped, you are simply untrained, and that can change. You see, the wealthy grow up hearing different things. They're not told to fear risk, they're taught to manage it. They're not told money is evil, they're told money is a tool. They're not told to save for retirement, They're taught to buy assets that pay them back, and the strange thing is, none of that is secret. It's just invisible. If you've never been shown, that's the cruelty of it. The knowledge was always there, but it lives in quiet rooms, in different neighborhoods, passed down in different conversations. And while your family said, work hard, stay safe, pray for a pension, another family was saying, buy early, hold long, own the land. So now here you are, maybe in your 30s, maybe in your 60s, doesn't matter. You're starting to see it, that no matter how hard you worked, you were always earning for someone else, making the rich richer, building someone else's dream, but never planting your own. And maybe for the first time, you're angry about that, or maybe just sad. That's okay. Let yourself feel that, because buried inside that sadness is power, the power to decide that it won't continue through you, that it ends here with you right now. You are not your father's fears. You are not your mother's limitations. You are not the voice that told you, that's not for people like us. You are awake now. Even if it hurts, even if it's late, you are awake. And the moment a man wakes up, the future begins to shift. You don't need millions to begin. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to interrupt the pattern. Instead of spending it all, keep a small piece. Instead of hiding it in a drawer, give it a purpose. Buy knowledge, buy tools, buy time, buy a future. Because every dollar you don't use wisely will be used by someone else. For their growth, their gain, their goals. That's the game no one explains. Money never stays still. It flows, either toward your freedom or away from it. So the question is not, can I afford to invest? The real question is, can I afford not to? We'll talk more soon. There's still more to unlearn, still more to remember. But tonight, just sit quietly and ask yourself this: whose beliefs about money am I still living by? You know what else keeps people poor? They wait. They wait for the perfect time, the perfect amount, the perfect certainty. They say, I'll start investing when I earn more, when things calm down, when I understand everything, when I feel ready. But the truth is, that time never comes. There is no perfect moment. There is only now, imperfect, uncertain, messy now. And that's the hardest part for people like us. We were taught to find safety in control, to plan, to protect, to prepare, but not to plant. Because planting means trusting the unseen. It means letting go of the illusion that we can control everything. It means giving something away, time, money, belief, with no guarantee it will return. And that is terrifying, especially for someone who has known what it feels like to have nothing. So instead, we wait, we hoard, we hesitate. We become careful in all the wrong places. We'll spend $10 every day on habits that comfort us, but we won't invest $10 a week on a habit that could free us. And it's not because we don't want to, it's because we've confused familiar with safe. And growth is never familiar. At first, it stretches you, it unsettles you. It calls you into a version of yourself you've never seen before. That's why poor people often crave predictability. Because when you've lived with chaos, predictability feels like peace, even if that predictability is poverty. They would rather stay with the known pain than risk the unknown possibility. So they delay one more week, one more paycheck, one more year, and they call it being responsible. But really, it's fear in disguise, and I get it, I do. You've been burned before. You've tried things that didn't work. You've watched people around you lose money in scams, or jump into something they didn't understand. So now you think that caution is wisdom, but real wisdom isn't about avoiding action. It's about taking the right action, even if it's small, even if it's quiet. You don't need to risk everything, you just need to risk something. Because if you keep waiting for the moment when there's no risk, you'll die waiting, and the world will never hear the version of you that might have been. You think money is what's missing, but what's really missing is motion. Money follows motion. It follows clarity. It follows energy. It doesn't come to the man sitting still. It comes to the one who moves with intention. And that movement doesn't have to be fast. It just has to be real. Start where you are, with what you know, with what you have, and above all, with who you are. Because you already have more than you think. You have experience, you have resilience, you have stories. You have lessons that cost you everything. Don't let those lessons go to waste. Turn them into wisdom. Turn them into leverage. Turn them into your next step. Most people think they need more money to start investing, but what they really need is more courage, more belief, more willingness to be a beginner again. Because that's the thing, you're not late. You're just early to a new way of thinking. And that kind of beginning takes humility. It takes quiet strength, the kind that doesn't shout, but shows up every day anyway, even when the voice in your head says, "What's the point?" You keep going, because now you know. The point is not just to grow your money, it's to grow you. Every act of investing is an act of hope, of defiance, of rebellion against the story that says, you were born to struggle. You weren't. You were born to rise, but rising requires roots, and roots come from planting, not just dreaming. So let today be the day you stop waiting. Stop hoping someone else will do it for you. Stop telling yourself that next month will be better. It won't be, not unless you are better. Not in the sense of being more worthy. You've always been worthy, but in the sense of being more ready, more willing, more awake. Don't wait until you feel brave. Bravery comes after the first step, not before it. So start with something so small, your fear doesn't even notice. $5, $10, one book, one account, one new question. Because momentum changes everything. Not all at once, but quietly, day by day, like water on stone. And before you know it, you're not the same. Not because the world changed, but because you did. We'll speak more next time. But let this thought walk with you a while. Maybe the thing I've been waiting for is already waiting for me to move first. It's strange how living with less teaches you things that sound true, but aren't. Scarcity teaches you to clutch, to guard, to hold on tight, even when what you're holding is disappearing. It teaches you that the safest hands for money are your own pockets, your own mattress, your own control. But the truth is, money that never moves, never multiplies, and over time, that kind of money dies quietly, shrinking beneath your feet, even as you try to protect it. See, scarcity doesn't just affect your bank account. It rewires your brain. It teaches you to think small, to plan for lack, to prepare for loss, even before it comes. So you shrink your desires. You mute your hopes. You stop reaching. Because reaching feels foolish when your whole life has been about holding on. I've seen it so many times. A man who finally earns a little extra, and instead of planning it, he builds higher walls around it. Afraid the wind might come. He doesn't see that the wind was always part of the season. It was never the enemy, just a force, one that tests your roots. One that shows you where your foundation stands. But poverty teaches you to avoid all winds, all weather, all movement, because it's safer to stay still than risk being swept away. And so you stay poor, not because you chose it, but because your mind was trained to avoid every door that looked uncertain, even if that door led to freedom, and the system knows this. That's why it never had to cage you. It just had to train you to cage yourself with fear, with doubt, with stories that sounded like wisdom, like, better safe than sorry, or, at least I have something, or, people like us don't do things like that. Those phrases sound smart, until you realize they've kept entire generations small, obedient, waiting, and that waiting becomes your inheritance, unless you break it, unless you say, no more. But that's not easy, because scarcity doesn't just live in the wallet. It lives in the nervous system, in the way you flinch when the bill arrives, in the way your stomach tightens when someone mentions investing, in the way your mind instantly thinks, what if it goes wrong? Instead of, what if it finally works? You've been conditioned to brace for impact, to expect disappointment, so even when opportunity knocks, you peek through the window and convince yourself it's a trick, that kind of life. It wears on a person, quietly, until they forget how to dream, how to act, how to rise. But you're waking up now, and that's a painful thing. To realize how many years you've spent protecting yourself from a future you never even gave. Chance, it's not your fault, but it is your turning point. Because no one can invest for you. No one can rewire your thoughts or walk your journey. You have to be the one who says, I'm tired of trading my life for temporary comfort. I'm ready to build something that lasts, and maybe you don't know how yet. That's okay, you'll learn. That's what time is for. That's what discipline is for. That's what courage is for. But the first step, the one most never take, is to stop seeing money as something only to spend, and start seeing it as something to sow. Money is not just for bills and food and survival. It's also for growth, for ownership, for freedom. But that shift only happens when you stop asking, how do I make ends meet? And start asking, how do I build something that ends this cycle? Because that cycle, it's not just economic, it's emotional, it's spiritual, and it will keep repeating until you do something it doesn't expect, until you choose faith over fear, until you choose planting over hoarding, until you choose vision over anxiety. And yes, people will doubt you, even the ones closest to you, especially the ones who love you, because your growth will scare them, your risk will trigger their fear. Your investing will look like gambling. To people who've never seen a seed grow, let them doubt, let them worry. You're not doing this for applause, you're doing it for peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you finally took ownership of your direction. We'll speak more next time, but take this with you, let it settle in your bones. Scarcity taught you to survive, but now it's time to learn how to build. Here's a truth I need you to sit with. Most poor people don't invest, not because they lack money, but because they don't see themselves as investors. It's not just a financial problem. It's an identity problem. See, when you've grown up counting coins, saving scraps, fearing every unexpected cost, your whole self-image becomes built around just getting by. So when someone says, you should invest, it feels like they're talking to someone else, someone wealthier, someone luckier, someone born into a different story. Not you. You look in the mirror and see a survivor. You see someone who's always had to hustle, always had to fix things after they've broken, always had to make miracles out of shortages, and you've gotten good at that. So good, in fact, that the idea of putting money into a place where you can't touch it, where it could disappear, feels like betrayal, like violating the laws that have kept you afloat this long. But here's what I need you to understand. Those laws were meant for survival, not for wealth. Wealth requires a different code, a different mindset, a different identity. You don't have to be rich to adopt it. You just have to stop saying, that's not for me. Because it is for you. It's just that nobody told you that before. No one said, you can be the one who owns, not just rents. You can be the one who grows, not just reacts. You can be the one who invests, even if it starts with just $10. But identity is sticky. It clings to your every choice. It whispers, stay where it's safe. It warns, you'll mess it up. It shamas, you're not smart enough for this. So you stay where you are. You keep doing what you've always done. And you justify it by saying things like, I just need more income first. I'll invest when I have more to work with. It's not the right time. But none of those are really about money. They're about fear. Fear of losing. Fear of failing. Fear of not being the kind of person who does things like that. Let me tell you something. The moment you decide to invest, even if it's just a small amount, even if it's messy or uncertain, even if you're still figuring it out, you're doing more than building wealth. You're rewriting who you are. You're saying to yourself, I am the kind of person who builds. I am the kind of person who thinks long term. I am the kind of person who plants seeds, even if I don't see fruit right away. And that changes everything, because now you walk into the store differently. You don't just think about what you can buy today. You think about what you're trading tomorrow for. You don't just measure success by income. You measure it by ownership, by freedom, by the quiet confidence of knowing you're on a path, not just spinning in a circle. And when things go wrong, and they will go wrong sometimes, you won't panic and say, see, I knew I wasn't cut out for this. You'll say, this is part of the process. I'm learning. I'm becoming. Because now, you're no longer just surviving. You're transforming. That's the real win. That's the power of investing, not just in assets, but in yourself, and the world will try to distract you. Oh, it's very good at that. It'll tell you to buy now and worry later, to chase status instead of value, to spend to feel better, and ignore the long-term cost. But you'll start to see through it. Because now you know something most never figure out. Your identity shapes your future more than your circumstances ever could. And if you change how you see yourself, your behavior follows. Your money follows. Your life follows. So ask yourself, right now, not tomorrow, not next year, who am I becoming? Because every dollar you hold is a vote for the future, a vote for the story you believe. Will you keep voting for the past, for survival, for scarcity, for fear? Or will you start voting for ownership, for growth, for a life that multiplies, instead of one that just maintains? You don't need permission. You just need a decision. And it starts here. With you. Right now. Let me ask you something few people ever ask you. What is the cost of not investing? Not in theory. Not in economics class. In your life, your real life. See, everyone talks about risk like it's only on one side. They say, investing is risky. Stocks go down. What if I lose it all? But what they never say, what no one teaches us growing up poor, is that doing nothing has a cost too, a steep one. But it's quiet. It sneaks up on you over time. And by the time you feel it's often too late to do much about it. You know what I'm talking about. It's that feeling in your late 40s or 50s when you look around and realize you've worked for 20, 30 years. And still, you own nothing. You've earned hundreds of thousands, even millions, across decades. And it's all gone. Spent, consumed, forgotten. You can't even remember where most of it went. But you do feel it. In the lack of options. In the pressure. In the exhaustion that never ends because the money never grows on its own. That's the cost of waiting. That's the cost of not investing. It's not dramatic. It's not cinematic. It doesn't happen in one big fall. It happens in slow motion while you're busy, while you're stressed, while you're putting it off for someday. Let me tell you what's really risky. Risky is working for 40 years and having nothing to show for it. Risky is thinking your job will always be there. Your health will always be strong. Your energy will always be high. Risky is relying on hope instead of having a plan. And hope, as beautiful as it sounds, is not a financial strategy. I don't say this to scare you. I say it because I've seen it too many times. People with good hearts, hard-working souls, smart minds. And yet, by the time retirement comes, or the job ends, or life shifts, they're scrambling, dependent, vulnerable. And you know what the saddest part is? They could have done something earlier. They had years where they could have started small, could have learned the basics, could have owned just a little bit of something that grows. But they didn't, not because they were lazy, but because they didn't believe it mattered. Because when you're poor, or even just surviving, every dollar feels too valuable to let go of. So you keep it close. You spend it on what's urgent, not what's important. But here's the paradox. The money you cling to today could have been your freedom tomorrow. In time, not money, is your most powerful asset when it comes to investing. The earlier you start, the less you need. The later you start, the more painful it gets. Every year you delay isn't just a year lost. It's a decade of growth you've traded away. It's compound interest that never got to compound. It's seeds that never got planted, and the harvest you never get to reap. That's the real cost of waiting. And nobody puts it on a receipt. But it shows up in your life, in missed opportunities, in stress-filled decisions, in a future that feels smaller than it should have been. So if you're watching this and thinking, I'll start investing once I have more, understand this. More doesn't come later. More comes from starting now, even small. You don't need a lot. You just need to begin. Maybe it's $50 a month. Maybe it's buying a few shares of an index fund. Maybe it's learning about how businesses grow. Maybe it's just changing your environment, so you spend time with people who think long-term. Whatever it is, the shift has to happen from fear to action, from excuses to ownership. And ownership isn't just about stocks or real estate. It's about owning your choices, owning your trajectory, owning your life. Because if you don't own your future, someone else will, and they won't be thinking about your best interests. You've already lost enough time. Don't lose more by doing nothing. Your future self, the one who's older, wiser, and perhaps a little tired, is begging you. Please don't wait. Now let me tell you about something even more dangerous than being broke. It's not poverty. It's not low wages. It's not even debt. It's instant gratification. That quiet voice in your head that says, why wait? I deserve this now. I've worked hard. I need a treat. Oh, how seductive it is. And listen, I'm not here to shame you. You've been through things. Maybe nobody ever rewarded you before. Maybe life has taken more than it's given. So when that small moment comes, to feel good, to feel seen, to enjoy something now, you grab it. You reach for that new phone, that meal out, those shoes, that gadget, and you feel it. The rush, the relief, the tiny taste of luxury. But here's the trap. Every time you feed that feeling, you borrow from your future. You shrink tomorrow so you can stretch today. And it becomes a habit, a silent addiction, a pattern so common, so normalized, that nobody even questions it anymore. But let me tell you the truth. Most people don't stay poor because of lack of money. They stay poor because of how they handle time and emotion. They choose the $100 pleasure now over the $1,000 return 5 years from now. They sacrifice the invisible for the immediate. And the world encourages it. The algorithms know it. The ads know it. Your phone knows it. Swipe now. Buy now. Indulge now. But here's the truth no one tells you. Wealth is boring. It's not dramatic. It's not fast. It doesn't make you feel like a king in the moment. It's slow. It's quiet. It's patient. And that's why so few build it. Because it requires emotional maturity. Delayed gratification isn't sexy, but it is powerful. When you learn to delay what you want now, so you can have more later, you shift your entire life's trajectory. Let me paint a picture for you. 2 people both earn the same amount. Both have the same expenses. Both live in the same city. But one says, I'll invest $200 this month and skip the new phone. The other says, I'll get the phone. I'll invest when I get a raise. Fast forward 10 years. The first person has $50,000 growing in an account. The second person has a drawer full of old phones. That's the power of delayed gratification. That's the power of trading short-term comfort for long-term peace. And here's something even more important. It's not just about money. It's about identity. Who are you becoming when you delay? You're becoming a person who thinks ahead. A person who sees the big picture. A person who creates instead of consumes. You're becoming someone the future will thank instead of blame. I'll tell you a secret that took me decades to learn. Freedom doesn't come from earning more. It comes from needing less and using what you have wisely. You don't need a $5,000 a month income to start investing. You need a $50 shift in mindset. You need to stop needing dopamine hits from things that disappear in a week. You need to value the quiet power of building. Brick by brick. Choice by choice. So next time you feel that urge to buy, to spend, to escape, pause. Ask yourself, what is this really costing me? What would my future self want me to do right now? It's not about being stingy. It's about being intentional. And once you start, once you feel the confidence of having money grow, even just a little, you'll never want to go back. Because peace feels better than any purchase. And freedom tastes better than any trend. Rich don't get there by accident. They delay, they invest. They think long. And they trust the process. And if you can master that, no matter how much you earn, you've already started walking away from poverty. Not just financial poverty, but mental poverty, emotional poverty, generational poverty. All of that begins to shift when you stop living for the moment and start building for the future. Now let me tell you something that'll break your heart if you really sit with it. Most poor people don't invest because no one ever showed them how. Not in school, not at home, not even at work. They were taught how to earn, not how to grow. They were taught how to spend, not how to build. They were taught how to survive, not how to escape. And that's no accident. The system doesn't benefit from you being financially free. It benefits when you stay dependent on wages, on credit, on consumption. So no one teaches you about compound interest. No one explains what an index fund is. No one tells you that you can own a piece of the companies you buy from every week. You go through 12 years of school. You learn how to dissect frogs, memorize dates, write essays. But not once do they teach you how to make your money work For you, and when you grow up poor, you don't have an uncle or a neighbor who's investing in real estate or stocks. You don't overhear conversations about retirement accounts at the dinner table. You don't get handed a book by your parents called The Intelligent Investor. Instead, you grow up hearing, "We can't afford that. Money doesn't grow on trees. Just be thankful you have a job." So you do what you know. You work, you earn, you spend. You start over, and that becomes life. But listen carefully. Just because you weren't taught doesn't mean you can't learn. In fact, the most dangerous thing you can do is stop at, "I don't know." You see, wealthy people? They aren't smarter than you. They've just had better conversations, better models, better exposure. You can get those too. You can learn. They can learn. Truth is, investing isn't some magical code you need a finance degree to crack. It starts simple. Open an investment account. Automate a small amount every month. Choose long-term, diversified funds. Leave it alone and let time do its magic. But here's where most people get stuck. They wait until they understand everything before starting. Don't do that. You didn't wait until you knew everything about walking before you took your first step. You didn't wait to fully understand love before falling in it. You learn by doing. Start with $10. Start with $50. Start with something, even if it feels small, because the real investment isn't in the market, it's in you. In building the mindset, the confidence, the identity of an investor. And once you've done it, even just a little, you'll feel the shift. You'll walk a little taller. You'll look at your money differently. You'll stop seeing yourself as someone who's always behind, and start seeing yourself as someone who is becoming. And here's the thing, when you invest, even in small amounts, you send a message to your future. I believe in you. And that message, it changes everything. It's not too late. You're not too old. You're not too far behind. You just need to start. To learn. To unlearn. To believe. Because the greatest tragedy isn't that poor people never had money. It's that no one ever told them what they could become with it. Now let's talk about something most people ignore. Not because it's complicated, but because it's uncomfortable. If you don't invest, you will spend your whole life trading time for money. And here's the hard truth. You will run out of time long before you run out of needs. See, there's a ceiling on how much you can earn through labor alone. You get tired. You get sick. You get older. You can't work 18 hours a day forever. And no matter how hard you hustle, you only have 24 hours, just like everyone else. But here's what wealthy people understand. Money doesn't get tired. Money doesn't sleep. Money doesn't age. Money, when invested wisely, keeps working, even while you're resting, even while you're traveling, even while you're holding your grandchild in your lap. It becomes a silent servant, a quiet soldier working in the background, a river that flows toward your freedom. But if you never invest, you're trapped in the only system you've ever known. Work gives earn, gives spend, gives repeat. You'll spend your youth earning, your middle age trying to catch up, and your old age worrying if you'll have enough. And it's not because you didn't work hard. It's because you never built something that worked for you. Let me ask you, what happens when your back gives out? What happens when the job downsizes? What happens when you want to slow down, but your bills don't? If you haven't invested, you've built no bridge from survival to security. You've chained your life to labor with no key to unlock it. But imagine if you started today. Even with a little, you set aside $100 a month. You put it in a simple low-cost index fund. You don't touch it. You don't panic. You just keep going. Over 20, 30, 40 years, that money starts to speak. It says, take that trip. You earned it. Help your daughter start that business. Retire not just with enough, but with dignity. That's the power of investment. Not just numbers on a screen, but choices, options, freedom. You see, poor people often stay poor because they've only been taught how to make money. But the rich, they learn how to multiply it, and that makes all the difference. So let me leave you with this. Every day you don't invest, you're working only for today. But the moment you start investing, you're working for tomorrow, for your children, for your peace of mind, for the life that's possible beyond survival. It's not about becoming a millionaire overnight. It's about no longer being stuck. So ask yourself, do you want to work for money your whole life? Or do you want money to one day work for you? If it's the second, then today is the best day to begin. So now you've seen the truth. Not a harsh truth, but a quiet one that's been sitting in the corner all along, waiting for you to notice. The reason 90% of poor people never invest isn't because they're lazy, or dumb, or careless. No, it's because no one ever showed them how. No one ever sat them down and said, hey, your future depends on more than your effort. It depends on what you do with the fruit of that effort. You weren't taught about compound interest in school. You weren't shown how to build wealth, slowly and quietly. And you certainly weren't told that you, even with your small income, your limited time, still have the power to create a different future. But now, now you see how fear, culture, comfort, and habit all conspire to keep people poor, not because they don't work hard, but because they never move beyond the habit of only working. Let me say this as gently as I can. Hard work will feed your family, but investing will free them. So don't let the past shame you. Don't let your mistakes haunt you. And don't wait for the perfect time to start. The perfect time never comes. But the right time? That's today. Start small. Start simple. But for heaven's sake, start, because once you do, you shift your life from a treadmill to a path, from endless motion to meaningful direction. This journey isn't about becoming rich overnight. It's about becoming wise over time. And that wisdom will protect your children long after you're gone. It will give them options you never had. It will whisper to them in quiet ways, your father, your mother left you more than bills. They left you a seed. And now it grows. So go plant your seed, patiently, faithfully, even joyfully. The world may not notice, but your future will thank you. And when that day comes, when you're no longer working for money, but money is working for you, you'll remember this moment, and you'll smile, because that's when you'll know you finally broke the cycle.